Hello and welcome to this Centercode training video pertaining to the pre-launch Enterprise Edition features, speaking specifically about user authentication with a consideration for single sign-on and trade compliance. So in this video we're going to talk about how to configure Connect's user authentication. We're also going to cover how to enable your own custom authentication system. And finally we'll talk about how to control access to your community for specific countries and IP addresses using your trade compliance tool. In the Viridian community story, we're talking about a configuration step much before we get into that launch step. You want to get these things figured out and set up, and single sign-on takes a little bit of configuration and correspondence with us, so be sure to let us know if you need that. Regarding user authentication, we're talking about disabling the user name change, which can be important if you have certain rules regarding the usernames and your authentication system. You've also got setting login validation and messaging, basically requiring certain setups for login information, be it username or password, and then messaging behind that. You can also set a redirect for alternate login credentials. And finally, this is also the page where you would reset the basic account information. So that initial step when they first create their account, which we'll go over a little bit later on, then this is how you would reset that page and have everyone refill it out just in case. Regarding single sign-on, we can configure and support a single sign-on authentication system. Just contact us to get that figured out. Again, it takes a bit of time for the configuration to get it all set together, so let us know as soon as possible, and especially before launch. It gets much more complicated after you launch your community. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our community and scroll down to the User Authentication tool. And as you see here, the list of the authentication systems that you have in the Viridian Dynamics community, we only have the Centercode Connect authentication, and that's just the typical username and password setup that we have automatically. From here, you would also be able to add a new authentication system by clicking on that link. So from here, you can see you've got those extra options for creating your own authentication system. You can choose from the type, be it direct or silent. Choosing direct opens up a couple of dynamic items, same with silent. So if you have a configuration you're looking for, feel free to fill out these forms as fitting. If you need help with it, go ahead and contact us. If you need to set up something as complicated as a single sign-on or something of that nature, of course contact us. Let us help you get that set up before you launch your community. But beyond that, go ahead and scroll through these, fill out whatever information you need to. If you have questions, go ahead and submit a ticket. So going back, we're actually going to modify the Centercode Connect authentication system. Go ahead and click on that Modify. It'll take you to the user authentication page. Now from here, you can disable the username change like we spoke of before. You can require the username regular expression, the password regular expression, thereby requiring a certain format or structure toward those two items. You have your error messaging. And finally, that last checkbox there is the personal account notice reset, which will basically force all of your community to resubmit their personal account information, be it the name, username, password, etc. Just check that box and hit submit, and it does that for the whole community. Now keep in mind that it's for the whole community and not individuals, so use it sparingly. Next up, we're going to talk about trade compliance, and we'll talk about allowing or blocking particular countries. You can also make exceptions or deny access to certain IP addresses and IP ranges. And finally, we'll talk about the response text for invalid or blocked users. Go ahead and jump back out to your community configuration screen and scroll down to trade compliance. So here you have the allowed countries and blocked countries options that work very much like a view. Simply double click to add or remove particular countries from the list. Scrolling down a little bit more, you have the IP addresses and ranges. You can choose if it's going to be an exception or a block. Enter in your range, click add, and it'll add it to the list. Finally, you have the block response, which you can either have it redirect to a particular URL whenever they're blocked. Perhaps your company has some sort of trade compliance documentation on their site you can redirect them to. Otherwise, you can have it display any particular message that you insert here. So again, once you've made your changes, simply submit. So in this video, we talked about how to configure the Connect authentication system. We also talked about how to create a new authentication system and to contact us if you are interested in single sign-on, and please contact us again before you launch your community. And finally, we talked about controlling access to your community for specific countries and IP ranges and the messaging corresponding to that. So of course, stay tuned. We've got more videos coming up.